Mike, have you ever heard that saying, uh, don't box me in, don't fence me in, don't put me in a box? Most people are
Yeah.
saying that in kind of a negative aspect, but leave it to Mike Lunney to create an episode designed to put us all in a box.
Put you in a box. Now, I didn't create this system, but as an adjudicator, you must put the bands in boxes, in order to maintain sanity.
All right. So explain to people what I'm talking about.
All right. First thing is a disclaimer. Stephen Cox, a good friend of mine. If you're listening to this episode, please just turn it off right now because you're going to hate it. Because he definitely doesn't. And we were talking about this earlier. Stephen doesn't mind the boxes per se, but this whole episode is going to be how do we compete better in marching band to get better scores. And he doesn't mind the idea of being in different boxes. He doesn't like the idea of this band beating this band and whatever. And I respect that. So Stephen, turn off your
or love us through it. Your call.
Yeah. Just pick me up next week, Stephen. Love you, man. Okay. But there's this box 1 through 5 marching band concept. But you learn, understand, know, understand, communicate, and become. Those are the 5 boxes. It's a pedagogical framework designed to move performers from the surface level memorization to a total artistic performance. And some bands never get out of certain box. And I don't want people to get this wrong. The boxes don't correlate to the ratings directly. There's bands that'll be first division bands at a region contest for whatever state it might be that might only get up to box 2.
Okay.
Because if you can play your music and you can make no mistakes and play your show, it doesn't have to be artistic. It just has to be clean. And so I don't want people to think that, well, if we're box 5, which is the highest box, that's a first division. If we're box 1, that means we're going to make a 5, kind of a reverse golf scoring kind of thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So please don't make that correlation with this. This can be relatable to ratings 1 through 5, but it's not a direct comparison. Okay. Extremely useful in prepping for area and state marching contest in Texas, as well as obviously for Bands of America, BOA, U.S. bands. Very influenced by DCI over the years. In ancient times, we used what was called the tick system, and that's when the judges would follow Mike Lunney around the field with his little 2-valve soprano bugle. And when I made a mistake, they held up their clipboard and smiled at me and went tick, and put a mark, and you got a 1/10 of a point taken off your score for every tick on the sheet. And then we switched to a very much rewarding for what we were doing instead of subtracting for what we screwed up. And then now it's kind of a mixture of both of them. Okay. But that was ancient history. Region is all about being, I'm going to talk Texas right now, but region is all about being just clean. I really believe that. And I hate to say it doesn't have to be artistic. It just has to be clean, but it doesn't have to be like ultra big giant productions. It just has to be clean. And it has to be musical, but to be musical, it has to be clean. Okay. I think Eddie Green, a great, obviously one of the Yodas of all band directors, said, there's nothing more unmusical than the right note in the wrong place. There's a lot of truth to that. So we can crescendo all we want to with a beautiful tone. If it's the wrong note or the right note in the wrong place, then it's still not going to sound musical no matter what we do. But the difficulty of our show, for the most part, does not impact our rating at region.
Okay.
So keep that in mind as a band director. Because I think sometimes our band director crews, they think, well, if I just do a hard enough show, I can do better with my program. That's not necessarily the truth. If you want to do well at area and state, that is definitely the truth. Your show better have some meat to it. There must be some meat on that bone, to make it work. But if your goal is, I'm just trying to rebuild this band, I showed up, there was 20 kids, and we just want to do well. Let's forget about electronics and props and color guard silks and all that stuff and drill designers. Let's put them on the blue dots and the field dots, and let's just make them at a 4-step interval, and let's play really clean with a fairly simple show, as simple as you need to make it. Okay. And so what I've got here for you, for the listeners, kind of a breakdown on how each stage functions in a high level ensemble environment. So if we're trying to create a band that can move from one box to another, from the beginning of summer band to the point of where there's the last show. These are the things we're looking for, Mr.
Can
Dan.
I ask something as we go through this, just to get this out of my head so I don't, the filter that I listen to things through affects how I receive what you say. So my question is, you say that about region levels, about being clean.
Mhm.
Is there I think you pushed back on me on this thought before, but I want to let you do it again if I'm incorrect. Are we looking to peak? If we're thinking in the terms of competition, we need to peak when we hit the state level, right? As opposed to peaking 3 weeks early and then that didn't sound the right way. But if we consider that if our goal is advancing to state marching contest, if we're talking about box fives for marching right now, then if I'm not all the way to box 5 at region, I'm probably still on a trajectory towards getting to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Is that
But I will say, I've never understood the whole peaking system because I've never had a band that peaked. There's never a moment when I thought, we peaked early. No, we never peaked early.
Right.
We're always trying to get better. So I kind of understand that, but I really don't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid, but I don't. I've heard that. Well, we don't want to peak by this moment because we still have 2 weeks till Larry. I said, "What's this peaking thing you're talking about?"
Right. I guess. But let me say it this way then. If I'm not as artistic at the region level as I want to be by the state level, I'm just making sure I got that show on the field. It's clean. It's in tune. We're moving to the right places at the right time. Then we can put in some of the artistic elements. But see, as I said out loud, I hear you saying you teach dynamics from the beginning, or you're
yeah. I was going to push back on you. Yeah. So you still teach everything. It's just a matter of what level you get it to, and it's what level the performer absorbs it and expresses it.
Well, that lets me listen to the conversation better through that lens.
Okay. So. Awesome. And the first one is, box 1 stuff, the learning, the acquisition phase. This is very summer bandish. Okay. The task, memorizing the notes on the page, the dots on the coordinate sheet, and the technical choreography. It's just the brass tacks of this is our show. Let's learn how to play this music with our instruments.
Present the material, present the drill.
Yeah, and
get acclimated.
And it's not a matter of like you're not going to waste time on how can we expand this crescendo here to a certain level and do this and this and do this, and that's where the big choreography is going to hit and all. No, we're making sure we push down second valve.
Got it.
That's an E natural on your euphonium. You better push down second valve.
F is first valve, right?
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to figure out. The goal is to establish a foundation. At this stage, the performer is still reading the show rather than performing it. They're just reading the material and they're just trying to represent the material that's on the page. Music concept, I call it like when we sight read things, there's the first trashing and there's the second trashing. Okay. So, and the first trashing usually happens when I was lucky enough to have my in-house composer named Luke McMillan, because he was my assistant band director for a number of years. And he would write the show. And after the spring concert, we would do the first trashing. We would take the show and pass it out, and we would go through the first trashing, which is just like, just read through it and do it a number of times, because your kids, it's amazing if you have a good foundation for them. That they'll fix a lot of mistakes on their own. You don't have to stop and go, that's second valve. They kind of look at you when they play like, oh crap, they know they screwed up. So don't waste time on things that will fix itself. Waste your time. Isn't that great? Waste your time on things that they might not have noticed. Okay. But what you're trying to do is just get the muscles working to where they understand that this is our opener. This is what we're doing here. This is where the front ensemble plays. This is how the transition works from here to here. We're just trying to get the GPS coordinates figured out. We're not even.
That's a great way to put it. I like it.
Yes, the GPS. We're going from Abilene to Dallas to a music store in Frisco for the Tarpley Empire. And so I just plug in that and I just go. I'm not being expressive. I just follow the directions barking at me through the speakers in my car. And guess what happens? 3 hours later, I'm in the parking lot at Frisco. Okay. And I'm at Tarpley Music. So there's nothing expressive or artistic about that. It's just it's the GPS locations. Okay. We're trying to figure that out. And some bands, that's a challenge. And it can be a challenge if your show's too hard. So be careful out there. Going back to the idea of never, it's easy to say never because it's not my band, but never make your show so hard that they can't get through that first level relatively quickly. I mean, like in a couple of weeks where they can actually, if my band can't play through the whole show by the end of the first week of summer band, we're going to have a long semester. It's because there's so much more to do than that. If your band's still fighting notes by week 4, then you picked too hard a show. My first show for my very first marching band was 4 lines I took out of the beginner band book that were just old songs, and I wrote a harmony, a bass line, and a drum part because I had a snare player and a bass drummer and a set of tritoms, if you can go back that far. And I called the show Children's Songs. Okay. It was like Go Tell Aunt Rhody. It was the most boring show in the world. But it was super clean. I made a first division. But there was nothing artistic about it whatsoever. That's okay. Because that show fit that band. Even one of my old high school band directors, one of my judges, and he goes, "Mike, that was the boringest show I've ever seen, but here's your one."
Great job.
Yeah, great job. I said, "Yeah, well, it's a work in progress, my friend. Well, next year we'll try to do something, a little more, advanced."
Right.
But pick your show. If you have to do it simpler and simpler, and it's okay to water down the parts. It's okay. No judge is going to say, "I really wish that woodwind feature would have had about a ton more notes in it at region level." They're gonna say that was played really well, or that was really not played well. That's what they're gonna say.
One of the things you said to me early on in this deal that just blew my mind was, "Don't be scared to rewrite the parts."
Yeah. Just tell them what you need them to do. Don't be afraid of giving a kid an easier part while another kid plays the harder part.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you just a rabbit hole thing here, but my senior year, I was in a trumpet trio that went to state solo and ensemble contest, and it was Bugler's Holiday.
Yep. Dun, 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 dun.
I was the only one who could double tongue. So we cheated. We made a 1. I played all 3 parts. It's supposed to be third, second, first, all of us, but and the other ones went bop, 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 bop. Mike Lunney's going Judge never noticed. Don't be afraid to rewrite parts. And if I was not an incredible trumpet, but I could double tongue like a monster. So let's use that. So let's do Greg Miller. Let's do Bueller's Holiday. Why not? Mike Lunney can double tongue. He can't do much else, but he can double tongue. So the other guys can carry the melodic section, and you're just going to double tongue like crazy right here. So don't be afraid to do that with your marching band. If you have 2 clarinets that can play really, really well in the woodwind feature, simplify it for the other 4 clarinets or 5 clarinets or 6 clarinets or whatever. Have them play a much simpler part, or have them not play that little tiny part until they play it off for you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Just to say, that's not where it needs to be at this point. So I'm going to take you out of this 4 measures. But I tell you what, if you'll come in and work on it after school, or you'll practice it up and play it off for me, you're right back in. I'm not saying you're out forever, but you can't play this yet. You don't have the technique to play it, but we're not done yet. So always give them a method to get back into the process. Okay. So that's box 1. That's box 1. Okay. So when we're judging like an area contest, if a band is only in box 1, where all they have is the notes, nothing but the notes, so help us God. We have the drill, nothing but the drill, so help us God. Then if they're at that level, then they're not going to be in finals at area. But it'll be a good band.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a 1 at region. They advanced to area. It's a good band. But we've got to somehow separate those 25, sometimes 45 bands, 1 through 45. And so the only way we can do it is to put them in these boxes. So if you have 1,000 points to give that band, box 1 might be 188. That would be the point value we might give them as we break it down. Okay. So then we go to the next one. the retention phase. Once the information is learned, it must be solidified so it can be recalled without hesitation. Repetition until muscle memory takes over. Okay. And we've all been in those situations, musicians, where all of a sudden you're playing something and you look at your fingers and you're going, I really don't know this part that well, but my fingers are doing the right thing and the notes are coming out of my horn. What is happening? That's muscle memory. Okay.
Right.
And there's really no such thing as truly muscle memory. We just call it that. It's our brain that does it. Our muscles just react to what our brain tells them to do. But that's a great term to use,
Sure.
It feels right, but you do it enough times till your memory takes over. Okay.
Right.
It's the ability to execute a drill move or a musical passage correctly 10 times out of 10. Or as my old horn instructor who used to tell me, said, you must play it correctly the number of times in a row that you are years old. So if you were 21 marching in the horn line, you must play that lick 21 times in a row without making a mistake. If you make a mistake, you have to start over at 1 again. That's kind of get difficult now that I'm 63. I mean, I don't use that rule anymore. It's too complicated I can't even keep track of it. That was 59 times. I don't know. I think my lip would be bleeding by that point. But it works for kids. It works for kids. Beginners, it really works because you can tell them that they're 11 years old. So do it 11 times in a row without a mistake, and you'll have it learned. Okay. So remember that the muscles don't memorize anything. It's actually a mental approach. So you do it enough times until your brain can do that, because your brain, and I'm sure there's scientific research, but it's just my experience as a band director. I really think the brain cannot actively think of two things at exactly the same time. It can't do it consciously. You can't think of drill and music at exactly the same time. Now, right. we're smart people. So at least most people are. Most people are smarter than Mike Lunney, but they can switch back and forth like a little toggle switch going drill, music, music, drill, music. They can switch back and forth. But you can't think about one. Has to be memorized.
Right.
One has to be almost subconscious. And I haven't unleashed this on you, but there's a great series of Making a Musician. There's a 5-part podcast that I haven't unleashed on you yet. This is going to be a blast. Allison Wilkerson does this. It's a great book. It's amazing, but it talks about that, about the different parts of our brain and how they operate. That's going to be a fun podcast, by the way.
I can relate to this, though. I remember as a person who never took piano lessons growing up, trying to teach myself to, go through piano proficiency in school. If you asked me to play the right hand, I could do that pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
If you asked me to play the left hand, look at there. I can play that pretty well. Now put them together. Nope.
Nope. You're a trumpet player. We're not smart enough to be piano players.
But talking about thinking of two things at once. I can read
right.
one line of the staff at a time.
Yeah, that's why they made us trumpets, man. Because we're kind of handicapped in that manner. We can't think of things complexity at all. Okay, so we play the loud note, the loud high note. Me play loud note. Okay, proudly. We play the big notes. Okay, but it's in a mental approach. The goal is confidence at this point with your band. The performer no longer fears messing up because the material is ingrained in their brain. You must have this is an important statement. You must have a culture where mistakes are not feared.
That's cool. That's a good saying. I like it.
Oh my gosh. It's the killer of any band is when they're scared to death to make a mistake.
Right. Well, you and I have had this conversation too, through all the contests that we've been to. There is a difference. I don't know that even if there's not a proficiency difference between the two groups, you can tell the confident band from the nervous band.
Yeah. You can tell it sometimes just by their posture.
As they enter the field.
As they enter the field, when they're standing there and they're being announced by Derek, you know what I mean? Because I've judged contests where Derek's the announcer, and did tabs for him. But it's funny, you can kind of watch the band and go, this band's not going to be good.
Right.
This
band's going to really have to step it up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're not confident. There's certain bands that enter the field on the basis of their body language says we're going to show off, and other bands are like, we're not sure why we're here exactly.
Man, I hope this happens.
Yeah, I hope lightning strikes in a good way and all these notes work, and it's human psychology, isn't it? Because when you get to area marching, and I've told this to directors so many times, but area and state marching is all from the shoulders up. It's all
wow,
power.
that's great saying.
It's all brain power because they know the show. And I see so many directors just pounding the drill and music into their kids in between prelims and finals. What a freaking waste of time.
They're not going to know it any better than they know it right now.
That is as good as it's going to get, as far as the logistics of it. What's holding them back is psychologically.
Wow.
It's their brain that's holding them back. It's not their muscle memory. It's not their power of execution. It's their brain going, the director doesn't think we're good enough to do this. So he's pounding out this little brass feature forever. Now we're going to be exhausted by the time we get to finals, and we're going to come in last.
Or it's even little things like, I've never warmed up in a parking lot with 8,000 people around me before. Or, oh my gosh, in Texas, the Alamo Dome is so huge and it's going to sound different in here. And what am I doing?
Yeah. And another rabbit hole to chase down or whatever. And we'll go into more boxes, but we used to, our practice field was the stadium field for a long time. And we finally you mentioned parking lots with all the people around you. We would we would record from the previous year, the parking lot. Now go with us with this. This is really bizarre, but then we would blast it through the stadium speakers while we warmed up at 6:45 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So that way they were complete. I got that from LSU because LSU does that, and they call it Death Valley. But in Alabama, they would play crowd noise through their stadium speakers at practice. Right. So we would do that as we warmed up. So they would hear like 6 bands around them warming up at triple forte. While we're sitting there going, okay, percussion, 8 on a hand, okay, brass, let's do our Remington. So we'd warm up with that going on in order to jar their minds so that the day of area marching, it was not a problem.
Right.
They were used to warming up that way. It was like, oh, this is how we do it. So just something to think about. That has nothing to do with this podcast whatsoever.
It's funny, as a performer, I can remember on more than one occasion going, oh, that's why we did that. Mm-hmm. It was the aha moments, but
yeah. And then we go to box
2.
Yep. Yeah, we're through box 2. So now our band can play their notes. It's ingrained where it's more of a habit kind of thing. And now and all this actually happens at once, but it doesn't come to fruition until you get to a certain level of understanding. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. It's not like we teach box 1 and then we teach box 2 and then we teach box 3. That's not how we do it. But all of a sudden it happens if you keep teaching everything to the kids. Number 3 is understanding the contextual phase. This is where the performer begins to see why behind the what. Why does this drill move happen right here? There's a really cool drill move because the guard does like this amazing equipment move, and we're accentuating what they're doing. Or we have this huge crescendo as this thing rotates in the brass and woodwinds and percussion. That's why that really cool drill move happens. Or maybe the music happens because of the real cool drill move. They start to think about the concept of the show.
See there? I was just ahead of you. There's the aha moments. It's contextual.
Yeah, if you'd read your notes, you wouldn't get ahead of me.
Or maybe I was leading you. How about that?
Yeah, that's what it was. Sure. Okay. It shifts from individual execution to ensemble awareness. So at the end of before this, in box 1 and 2, we're just worried about ourselves. It's every man and woman for themselves. It really is. Yeah. It's like trumpet 13 could care less if trombone 4 passes out on the field because that has nothing to do with their trumpet 13 drill, so they could care less. It's like, oh, some kid passed out back there. I don't care. I'm trying to learn my music and drill. But in box 3, that's when we become aware of the fact that, the low brass feature, that's why the low brass players are in front of us, because they've got a low brass feature. Now you're starting to actually, for what you care about the other members of the band. You care about what they're doing, whether they're color guard, percussion, front ensemble, whatever. Okay. This is where most programs are stuck the month before contest happens. UIL contest, not the pre-UILs. But if it's like, yeah, that's where most bands get stuck. And then they never progress past the contextual phase. And so it's our job as directors, and I'll give you some hints as we go along, ways to push you out of box 3 into box 4 and 5. And part of it is within your control as a director. Part of it's not within your control.
That's the scary part, but
part of it's the level of the kid.
Right.
The level of the kids that are in front of you. And I was real fortunate that I had a really good feeder program and great middle school situation and great band directors that worked around me. I just made sure to get buses and meals, and they made sure the band was ready. And so then I could get up there and prophesize and, go to box 5 and whatever. And, but it was not me. It was the system that was in place. Okay. So sometimes it takes years to get to this level. So if you're a young director, don't feel like you failed just because you didn't get to the holy grail known as box 5, the mastery phase. Okay. It might not happen. It might not happen for 5 years. It might not happen for 6 years. It might not happen for 10 years. But it will happen.
Right.
It will happen. Okay. And then number 4, the box 4 is communicate, the performance phase. This is now we've gone from individuals in box 1 to ensemble and so forth to box 2 and 3 to now we're audience centered. Think about that. It's all of a sudden their eyes brighten up and they go, oh, we're doing this for the audience.
Right. We're taking them on a journey. Right.
Yeah, we're taking them on a journey. And that audience also includes our judging panel. We want to tell the judges and we want to tell the audience what we're doing by what we're doing. At this level, the focus shifts from performer to audience. It is no longer about doing the work. It's about projecting the work. This is an even bigger shift in box than the previous shifts from 2 to 3. And yes, bands get stuck in this box as well. Think area finals band versus top 3 bands at area. That's the difference. Okay. Because box 4 stuck bands will be area finalist. This is very generalized comments here. Sorry. But box 3 bands will make box 2 bands will make their first divisions, and box 1 bands, let me back up. Box 1 and 2 bands will make their first divisions, and they'll be 25th, 26th at area. Nothing wrong with that. It's great bands. They're on a journey. Okay. The ones that make their way up into box 4 are the ones that are like area finalists. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden we get to box 5, and now we're talking about medalists going to state, box 4 and 5. So I know it sounds kind of convoluted because there's no direct line that says now you're a box 5, now you're a box 4. This is a very generalistic approach to what's happening. So, but as a judge, you can see it. You can see it, and you can know that if you have a band that's a box 4 band, okay, they're an area, they might be in area finals, but you're thinking this probably isn't one of the top 3 bands in this contest. By the time prelims are over, you're going, no, that band's in box 4. That's why they received about 600 to 800 points in scoring.
Right.
From you as a judge, because your box 5 bands will be the 800 to 1,000. Okay. And in BOA competition, it is in those boxes. They score within those boxes. But we kind of manipulated in UIL to adopt some of their, and it's listed in UIL, but they don't call it boxes. They call it, I forget what the term for it is, but we just give our scores according to where that band has gone to. Okay. Here's the task. We're using body language. We're using facial expression. We're using musical phrasing to tell the story. Okay. In fact, with facial expression, I know I've had a lot of people, those old heads, those old guys and gals that go, why don't we use hats? Why are there not hats on their heads? We're supposed to have hats on, and we're supposed to have hats and trousers. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a reason those bands don't have hats on their heads anymore for a lot of those bands. And there's nothing wrong with having hats. Hebron High School wears hats, and they're pretty dang incredible.
Right.
Okay? But you can express with facial expression a whole lot better when you can see their face. Okay. Sure. So if you've got a band that's very expressive, I say rip those hats off their heads and let them express. If your band is very boring and bland, stick a shako on that head and put a plume on it and pull that brim down where there's 2 fingers from their nose to the bottom of that brim, because we don't want to see their little faces. We just want their face covered up with hat, brim, and with their instrument. And then we just want them to play. Go to your strength. Go to your strength.
Right.
They might not be ready to be expressive that way. Okay.
If you don't have a pretty smile, don't smile.
Yeah, if you're in a beauty contest, have no teeth, don't smile. Use the other assets God gave you to win this beauty contest.
Sorry, it just hit me. It's a Mike Lunneyism that's stuck in my head.
I use that a lot. Okay, there's the truth to that. Okay, this is hard too. This requires a very high level of physical and emotional energy. It is hard because this high level of energy to produce results has to happen every day, even in rehearsal. And I tell you, a lot of bands do it well. One band that pops out, 2 bands actually pop out that do this really well is Fredericksburg and Pecos here in Texas. And I'll say this about Fredericksburg. They do it really well. They do not run drill. They do not run sections of music. They perform drill and they perform sections of music on a Monday night at 7:30 in September. Everything that band does is a performance, and there's no mystique on why they're a finalist in 4A state marching, because they perform at box 4 level by the middle of September.
Okay, but let's stop there, because how do they get through box 1 through 3 so fast? Is it just a continuation of what they've been doing? Is it their culture? Is it their system? How do they get to box 4 so fast?
Yes to all of that. Okay. It has to do with the level of their middle school program is exceptional. Their directors who teach the beginners, which includes the high school directors, are very exceptional in what they do. And so there's a musical foundation for it. And then as they progress into the high school band, there's a cultural venting to it where it's the kids all know they're part of something really special down there. They know it's a great band program, and I tell you this, it's not always been a great band program. They've had their lulls. Okay. And
Sure.
So you can't just say, well, it's a band town, so all their bands are always great. That's not true. They've had some pretty bad bands over the years. They've had some incredible bands, but it hasn't been like, a cakewalk, So to answer your question, yeah, and then the cultural thing has to be there, and then they have to somehow motivate those kids to be expressive every single time. And and we've talked about this in other episodes, but if they run part of their drill and they're performing and it's kind of flat in energy, then you make them do it again. And you tell them, you said, we're not here to watch you run through drill. You need to perform this right here. And you even
and I think that
questions like, what do you need to do as an individual to perform at a higher level? And you make them answer. And then they'll say, we need to do this. We need more musical dynamic contrast. We need better choreography. We need to be more physically with stronger core body strength in order to do our choreography to make it look the same across the entire band, because we're all individuals, but we have to look like a machine because a machine that does things together looks artistic and performance level.
I think the battle becomes complacency and entitlement. These things don't just magically happen. We got here by doing these fundamentals and doing this and doing this. So let's go back and do those things.
Yeah. And again, to beat a dead horse, your show has to be within the grasp of your band well enough that you can go back and do fundamentals.
Right.
Every rehearsal I've been at Pecos and Fredericksburg, and I could name 10 other bands. So those just came to mind. So I'm not trying to say those are the only bands, but they spend a 3-hour rehearsal. The first hour is fundamentals. The brass players will be working for 40 minutes on lip slurs.
Okay.
Obviously, their show's within their grasp. Otherwise, they'd be fighting notes for 3 hours.
Right.
And fighting drill. So you've got to, as a director, make sure the music fits your band. Even if you have to water it down and change the parts, that's okay. If you have to take out 5 minutes or whatever, there was one year with my band, we didn't even do the closer. We were doing a Journey show on an off-state year. I call it an off-state year because it used to be state was every other year.
Right.
But they just didn't work hard enough. I didn't teach well enough. Something didn't happen because we weren't ready. So we just left off the entire closer. We chopped off the final 2.5 minutes off our show, did a reprise of the last part of the part one. And our show was 5 minutes and 15 seconds, and we made our first division. Didn't faze me in the least. I said, hey, we're not going to go out there and embarrass ourselves. We don't have time to learn this. We don't even know the drill to part 3. So it's okay to change what you're doing. Okay. Change.
Sure.
And then, oh my gosh, it's engagement. That's the goal. Reaching the judges in the back of the stands to ensure the show's message is received. And we all know that when it happens.
So why'd you put it that way? Why'd you say the back of the stands?
Well, because they have to perform to the entire audience. Okay. Right. And I'll give you an example. And we've had this conversation, Derek, and I'm not going to point out any bands, but they'll do a show on I don't know. We'll say a scary show of like nightmares. So they'll have some girl that runs around the band the whole show in some kind of robe.
I didn't know where you were going, but yeah, I got it.
Screaming and they're not performing for anybody. It's absolutely stupid because you're sitting there watching that going, this is ridiculous. They're performing for themselves, and we don't even understand what the hell is this show even about.
What are we doing?
Why is this girl running around screaming and scaring baritone players, and they're acting like they're afraid? And, it's like, this is the biggest bunch of BS I've seen in my life. It's like some idiot put this together. So if you did that show, I'm sorry about that. But you could do the same show and you could make it very artistic.
Right.
But they didn't. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I mean by perform to the back of the stands. You got
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Everybody there, not just the judges, but Grandma Susie in the corner of the stadium needs to be able to go, I understand this show. And at this level is where if somewhere in the show, someone gets goosebumps. You know what I mean?
Popcorn moments.
Yeah. They go, ooh, that was good. It was like, I got to tell my friend Luke McMillan, we were playing that jazz band gig yesterday, and he was playing bass right next to me. And there was this hit, I forget what the tune was. And the trumpet players played it. And, he's not a very emotive person. If you know Luke McMillan, he's a very passionate person, but not very emotive. Does that make sense?
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, sure.
And he's playing his bass and he looks at the drums and goes, oh man, that was good. Because it was just a punch, man. All the trumpets just hit right on the right moment. That was a popcorn moment. In a marching band, that was where the judges, that's where your audience, you get goosebumps. You're like, oh, that was good.
Nice.
Good, nice. Okay. So we get past that point, and then you start talking about bands who are in state finals and state medalist in finals, the mastery phase. This is the holy grail. Okay. And it can be achieved because we all see bands that do it. In fact, if you watch the 5A, 6A contest, all 12 finalists are box 5 bands. And there's probably quite a few box 5 bands that didn't make finals.
Right.
That's just how dadgum good those bands are. This is the pinnacle of this box 5 philosophy. There is no longer a distinction between performer and performance. You can feel this level as a spectator. Instead of why is that girl dressed as Red Riding Hood running around the field all show? You've gone past that point to going, I feel what they're telling me.
Yeah.
It's not a conceptual frontal cortex moment. It's a medulla oblongata brainstem moment. Think about that for a second, where you go, holy crap, that was good. Oh my God, I felt that. Right. My soul felt that. It's things like that I say as a judge. You went past my intellectual ability, and my soul felt what you just did on this field. Thank you for coming and playing for me today. I like to say it that way. I like to pretend like the band's playing just for me. That's
audience of one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, thank you for playing for me today, kind of thing. The task, total immersion. The performer, every kid on the field isn't playing a character or marching a show. They're the embodiment of the music and the movement. They are the show. That is cool, isn't it? That gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, because it makes my brain go back to all those bands I've seen that are box 5 bands. The goal is transcendent performance. This is where the magic happens. When an ensemble achieves a level of intensity and unity that feels effortless and inevitable. Think about that for a second. They make it look so easy.
Yeah.
And you just watch them and go, that's the toughest thing I've seen. I mean, that show is so dadgum difficult. They're doing Rocky Point Holiday, and they're just screaming out parts and followed by this lush, beautiful Cuban melody. And you're going, oh my God, that band is good. And they make it look so easy. It's like watching Doc Severinsen play trumpet. He just makes it like, I mean, anybody can do this. Just put the horn to your face. Okay. But that's kind of the 5 boxes. Now, here comes the questions. How do you get your very young or inexperienced performers to catch up? How do you get the vast majority of your students to move to the next box? Sectionals, peer leadership, building a band culture, just hard ass work. It's a slog, man. It's a slog. We shall continue this slog until we move to the next box. And it's a matter, and it's in everyone's best interest. It's not a punishment phase. It's like, we just got to keep doing this. What is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, but it helps if that step's in the right direction. Okay.
Right.
So every step has to be in the right direction. When do you know what box a student is struggling in? It makes it easier for them to understand what to do and how you can teach them. It's okay to tell your kids about these boxes, is what I'm trying to say. It's okay to say, we are in box 1 right now, and put it on the front of the band hall. Have box 1 criteria, box 2, 3, 4, and 5 criteria, and say, this is our goal. We don't know if we're going to make it or not, but that's our goal. Our goal also is to get to state marching, but we don't know if we're going to make it. We don't even really know if we're going to make a 1, do we? We don't have control over that, but we do have control over the criteria on these pieces of paper, these big giant poster boards. So let's work at this. And it is a slog. It's okay to teach them that. Don't ask kids to project or emote the feeling to the audience when they don't even know the key signature.
Seems obvious, but I'll go with it. No, I get your point. That's what I'm trying to say.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Kids, we need to perform. I've sat there with another director working with their band, and they're going, we need to really project all the way to the back of the stadium, and we need to make sure to connect with the audience. It's like, it'd help if we played in the right key as well.
Right.
We're in box 1 not screaming at them, but trying to tell them to be a box 5 band when they don't even know their notes yet. Back it on up, baby. Put that truck in reverse, because we got to get back to box 1, and we've got to figure out the notes, and we got to figure out our drill. And then we can go to box 2 and box 3. It happens in order for a reason. It happens like building with Legos. It happens in an order for a reason. And also think of it with your kids as like a bell-shaped curve, like how we do testing, that the scoring system in what we do in marching band is that way, but each kid progresses through the boxes. Not every kid's going to progress at the same time, correct?
Makes sense.
Your all-state clarinet player might be at box 5 level by September 4th. Your 15th chair trombone, if you're lucky enough to have 15 trombones, might not ever make it past box 1. And that's actually okay. They're doing all they can. Okay. It's all right. You just got to make sure that the band progresses to the next box. You don't have to rely on every kid getting there. Some ways to make this happen: use video of accomplished groups to convey your message. It doesn't have to take up rehearsal time anymore. We have these things called Google Drive. Okay. Right. And kids love watching videos. Just load up videos that are free on YouTube and show them a box 1 band. There's bands post all their performances. You can find a box 1 band pretty easily. You can find a box 2 band at a performance, a box 3 band, and label them and put them there, and then have the kids as a 6 weeks test say, what are the differences between these bands? Make them think.
Right.
use guests to come in and model what needs to happen. And I'm not talking about clinicians necessarily like me that are just, I'm more the plumber that fixes the leak in the sink. You know what I mean? That's my job as a clinician. Celeste Souza is an amazing choreographer. He would come in and work with my band. He's just stunningly good at what he does. And that's what he does for a living. Bringing guys like that to it, because he took my band and was like, he just showed them how to do a few different body moves and they did it. I was like, oh my gosh. I was really thinking this wasn't going to work. I said, and if you can't afford to bring them in, it's okay to trade skills. If you're a good trumpet player, say, man, can you come work body movement in my band? I'll come do 4 trumpet sectionals for you. It's okay to trade skills. Okay. Barter system is great. As directors, use this concept for daily teaching, but maybe more important, use it to plan out your season lesson plan for your group. When do you expect to be at box 2? You don't have to tell the band that necessarily. It'd be, if you're lucky enough to have a staff, maybe tell them. Maybe not. Okay. But you've got to know, when do you plan on being at box 3? And what do we need to do to get there? Be mindful of the same concept, because it can be applied to concert band, can't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Because we've talked marching band the whole time, but this is just basic. It's kind of like our debate between Mr. Cox, Mr. Hekimovich. There's things that can be applied to a band program that competition might not be the issue.
Right.
Marching is not the issue here. The issue is performance, whether it's a jazz band or a concert band. Because all music is meant to be a total performance. If I play a trumpet trio, that's meant to be a total performance. And, I definitely wish the best of luck to all my compadres out there for this season. I'm hoping that you do reach your goals.
Mike, before, I'm going to ask you this, though. It's been chewing at the back of my head. Realistic assessment. Before we can make this year's group box 5, this is actually a question, not a statement. Do I have to assess what box we made it to last marching season and see if I can figure out where we stumbled or where we fell short? And listen, if we only if our group was only able to get to box 3 because that's where they are in their journey, I get that answer. But is this an annual thing? Is this like, okay, well, we only made it that far but preseason, everybody's undefeated.
Right.
In sports, that's everybody's so far, everybody's in first place. It's what happens during the season that defines where you end up, right? But it almost seems like it's as important for the educator to stop and go, what did I do that held us back last year from getting from one box to the next? Was it my teaching? Was it my poor time management? Was it my whatever it might have been? Or is it just where the kids are right now? And this sounds like defeatist. I know in my head, we're not a box 5 band yet. But it doesn't mean I don't try to accomplish that. Is that what you're... Walk with me there.
Well, a couple of things in there. One is base what you're doing on self-reflection, on not necessarily all the time with results. And I say that because one of the biggest problems that band directors run into is trying to compare this year's band to last year's band. There's bands I know, they'll say, well, we played a grade 2 show last year, so this year I think we can play a grade 3 show because we were successful last year. And then I go, that's the stupidest statement I've ever heard in my life. This is not last year's band. If it was exactly last year's band, that's an intelligent statement. So grain of salt here. It's okay to do self-reflection and say, what could I have done better? And to get better results out of the band, but don't do it as, well, we got to box 3 last year, so this year we need to get to box 4. No, you might go from box 4 to box 2. Yeah. They might have put 4 more electives in your schedule, and all of a sudden you lose all your seniors. So don't make that mistake. But I like your idea, though. There has to be a certain amount of self-reflection of what things did I do last year that worked, and what can I change in my lesson plans to make it better.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is, if historically you're honest enough to say to yourself, I never really get past box 3. My group, what can I do to make that jump to box 4? And I know you just went through that. I know we just discussed going from contextual to performance. I get it. But do we have to be honest enough with ourselves to say, I need to focus more on the performance aspect of what we're doing? Maybe I just haven't paid attention to that before.
Maybe so. Or maybe that's as far as that program can go for the next 4 years is to box 3. Sometimes there's a little bit of this is as good as we're going to be able to do this. Maybe we can do one more thing. Sometimes there's limits. Sometimes the school forces limits on you. Sometimes
I'm not trying to build excuses in for anybody either. Sometimes that school district, that's as much as they're going to support you.
Yeah.
Box 3 is what you got.
Yeah. Some schools, all they want is school song, fight song, and national anthem, and that's it. In other schools, it's if you don't make state finals, then we got to have a discussion. You know what I mean? So it's hard.
Sure.
So it's hard to answer your question, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, but you did answer my question by telling me it's hard to answer that question.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, but I appreciate that because I'm the same as you, man. As a guy who has spent most of his life as a music ed rep for a music retail store, I want all those guys and gals to be fantastically successful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm invested in their box 5.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll tell you this too, Derek. I found this really interesting. I have a really good friend that decided to take all of his critiques and write them down from the audio files from state marching. Then he inserted those as prompts into AI on ChatGPT and asked for a full semester lesson plan for his band next year. It was amazing.
Was it pretty good?
Oh, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect, to the point of where even some things it said, realize that this next section is not talent oriented. It's only work ethic oriented. Or this is purely talent oriented for this. Your band must do this, this, and this. In week 3, this is what I would suggest you do. And it just pulled from the entire data source of the world and put together a lesson plan. I'm not that he's going to follow those directly, but I tell you what, with AI, with all the musicians or the big stink of AI is going to kill all of us. I tell you what, it gave him some really good ideas. So I would highly suggest to do that if you have. Everyone has access to that now. It's
sure,
but you've got to give it the right prompts because garbage in is garbage out. But you got to give the right prompts. These are the things that the judges said at region marching that my band didn't do well, and I ended up making a 3. What can I do to improve on these fundamentals in order to have a first division in marching band in Texas UIL competition? And it will give you a full semester lesson plan week by week.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Use that to your advantage, and then take what you want out of it.
Sure.
I wouldn't.
Well, I'll join you here in saying best of luck in this upcoming, and really this season started now, if we're being honest.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're already in the fall season now.
Yeah. There's bands right now that are developing their show for the year next, for the 2027 show, on how they're going to be box 5 and how we're going to, the color palette and the choreography and the drill. And so, I mean, we're in a weird world right now, or it's not the old days. Let's play a Sousa march and make sure the drummer doesn't drag, It's a different world. It's a different world.
Cool. Well, I know that you and I both, if we can help any of our friends out there, let us know. We'll do anything we can. And we do wish you best success. So Ask Mike's here to help.
Yes, sir.
That was an ending.
Yeah.